Hi. Okay, so thank you so much for coming. I will start off introducing myself. I'm Emily Zhu. I am the co-founder and the president of the Gen Z Initiative. Cyrus, you can go next.
Hi, my name is Cyrus, and I'm part of the Gen Z Initiative.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm also part of the Gen Z Initiative.
Okay, I'll go. Hi, I'm Bianca. I am the head of outreach for Future Voters LA, and I will pass it on to Chloe.
Hi, I'm Chloe, she, her, and I'm part of the outreach committee at Future Voters LA.
I am Catherine. My pronouns are she, her. I'm also part of the outreach committee at FVLA.
So we've gotten introductions all finished. I think we should just jump right in. So our first topic, or our first main point that we'd like to talk about, is voter suppression. So the first thing is pretty much, since let's like define voter suppression, and if you guys want to give your description, that'd be great. Because well, since we're going to talk about it, we might as well just like define it. Our definition is voter suppression is a strategy used to influence the outcome of an election or discouraging or preventing specific groups of people from voting. Anything you guys like to add on?
Yeah, just really quick, I think it's important that there's many different types of voter suppression, but the overall goal is to like prevent people from voting or discourage them, and it's in all forms, which we'll talk about later.
Great. Okay, so our first question is, how does this affect our voting today? And any of you guys can answer it.
I can start off. I think that voter suppression affects voting today, especially in the younger generation, because a lot of the times it's kind of, we're told that we shouldn't vote because we don't know enough. And I think like how this kind of plays out, especially is that say the ballot isn't in different languages or the polling places aren't accessible to everyone. Those are forms of voter suppression, and it affects our elections because if voting is our right and it's not accessible to everyone, then how do you expect there to be a turnout? And how do you expect it to be a democracy if it isn't accessible to everyone? You know what I mean? You can't say it's a right, but then not make it accessible to everyone, obviously.
Definitely. I think that it's like something it's like really unfair, and it's really unfortunate that it like still happens. And I think that like with it still happening, I think it's just like it's gonna make it so much harder for the youth, and not even just the youth, but like minorities and like so many other communities to just vote. Since it's like well, we have it, and like it's gonna be what's gonna happen for the next 4 years, and like everybody should be able to contribute to that, right?
Yeah, also I want to add that like, see, some forms of voter suppression is like voter purging, which is essentially like, you know, community, like in Georgia, for example, they have this rule where it's like the exact match rule, and it's like every single hyphen in your name, like down to everything, including the signature, has to be exactly the same, or else they'll scratch your voter registration. And a lot of people don't know about these laws, and obviously some people got their license when they were 16. So yes, your signature is going to change from when you're 16 to when you're obviously older, even if that's like 2 years or 20 years. And so without people knowing about these laws, they can get their voter registration unwilling, like without knowing, scratched. And this caused a lot of problems because it's like, yes, you can get it fixed, but you have to go to your supervisor's office, and then you have to petition, and then you have to do all these things. And if it's last minute, if you show up and your name's not on the list, then obviously that can prevent you from voting. And I mean, yes, there's solutions to solve this, but without knowing, it causes a lot of problems.
Also, voting is like how we directly like change how we want to see America and our country as a whole. So when people are restricted and minorities and youth are restricted from voting, it prevents us from making the change that we want to see. It's like this terrible cycle. We can't vote, so we don't get to see the change we want, which is like the number one problem with voter suppression. It like limits the amount of people that can vote, and it works in the favor of like certain like politicians that might just want a certain type of voter. They will restrict like minority votes to get what they want. And it's just terrible because it's how we change America. And if we can't vote, we can't do that.
I think voter suppression is just like, it happens a lot when people don't talk about voting, just like in school, like teachers don't ever talk about registering to vote or why you should vote. And that leads to a lot of voter suppression because it's never talked about.
Like I remember in like 5th grade, or even like this year, we were all talking about like the presidential elections that are coming up very, very relatively soon, so go vote. But I think that like it was never talked about. Like we never really talked about like the struggles that like certain communities have and like how this affects our nation as a whole. And I think it's like something that it's unfortunate that we don't that teachers don't educate us about it. And so if we don't know about it, then like how will we be able to create change as like the next generation?
So I want to add, I think often I've been told that like, oh, you can't talk about voting at school because then you're going to bring up politics, and oh, that's so scary. But the idea is if we don't talk about this and we have these ideas that talking about politics is scary and unheard of, then we're going to continue to push out that narrative and continue to have people not want to vote. You know what I mean? You can't say that like voting can't be talked about. It's like these are the next generation. And like you see like, oh, these freshmen are so tiny, 14 and 15. Well, in 4 years, they're going to be the ones making a change in our country. So if we don't start it from like 6th grade, 7th grade, you know what I mean, since the beginning, then nobody's going to know about it. I mean, I had people who didn't even know who the president was right now. That's insane. So it's like the sooner we start getting people to care about politics and to care about what's happening in the world, the more voters we're going to get.
And like not having civic engagement or civic like learning about civic engagement in school is also like a form of voter suppression, because if we don't know about it, how are we expected to go out to the ballots and like vote, which is terrible. But that's why like being part of these organizations is such a good idea, to spread like more information and to like make up for what we're lacking in our education system, because it's so important to know how to vote, and it's so important to know like why it's important, and it's so important to like understand the policies that we're voting on.
Yeah, and that's because like so many new people to this are like too intimidated to vote, and so they don't vote, and like they don't really know why it's so important to vote. And so I didn't even know like the importance of voting until I joined this organization, and then they reached out to you guys, and now we're having this. So now I know more about voting, and it's just like good to have like the knowledge.
That's like the great thing about like having organizations is like before, I know like within our own organizations, like everyone had their own strengths when it came to like what we were passionate about, but like a lot of people just weren't as informed.
Obviously, these organizations are great, but you shouldn't have to be in an organization and spend hours and hours to know about this issue. But in my opinion, this should be kind of common knowledge. I shouldn't have to put the extra effort in to find out where, like who our Secretary of State is, how to actually vote, what happens when there's, a mistake on your ballot. But we've kind of been told that it's not our issue to worry about, and therefore it's kind of encouraging people not to vote because of like, I don't know about it, then why would I? And make it accessible in schools, talk about it, put in your history classes. Like every single thing we're learning is all surrounded by voting. If we didn't have voting, then like I wouldn't even be here today. So I think it's very important that we talk about it because it's the foundation of our democracy.
Yeah, I feel like politics can be really confusing for some people, which might draw them away from voting. Like, because I just started like going into politics not long ago, and like I feel like there's so many things about politics that might be scary to some people. So I feel like that's a reason why a lot of people don't want to vote.
It's kind of scary sometimes what you learn within like politics and what's happening within like our world, so it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like people think they need to be like experts on politics, or like need to be like really, really into it to like get involved in the community around them and to like advocate for voting, but you don't. I do not want to be like a politician. I kind of like hate politics sometimes, but I still like know that this is so important. I want to help out like as much as I can.
It's not even about the candidates or about the parties or about anything like that. Like deep rooted down, it's about the issues that you care about and that you're going to like, you want to make a change in our country. Like people kind of need to step away from the fighting and the arguing and the party system and look towards the real rooted issue is, making a change. And without your vote, I think people so commonly are like, well, I don't really like people who are running. I don't really like our government, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's not going anywhere. So we kind of have to not feed into it, but, vote for who you think is going to make the biggest change. And kind of, you don't have to care about politics, but you do have to care about the future.
I think the good thing is things are changing. Like my school is like, we just hosted a day where like kids learned about like the electoral college and voting, and I like did like a little mini presentation on how to like register to vote. So I don't know, I think you just have to really push things at your school to get things done. And as long as you like communicate with your school, or I think things can actually like happen. I think you can educate your student body about like politics.
And I think like it would be so much easier if like schools, they could just dedicate the time to be able to like inform us what's going on within the world, because like we still have school, we still have extracurriculars, we still have like a lot of things to do within our own lives, right? And still finding the time to be able to discuss and really truly understand what's happening within the world, it's hard because we are all still like teens.
Yeah, and I feel like schools, they think that we don't really know what's going on with all the politics and stuff. In our school, we don't do anything with the politics, and we don't like tell people to vote and stuff. And not everyone is like, and not a lot of people care too. If you don't know about the topic, people don't really go out and research themselves.
So our next topic is the importance of voting, and I'm going to start it off by just asking you guys what you guys think is important about voting. Like, what do you think the most important thing is?
I think a really important thing is just like getting your voice heard and making change. I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't vote because it's just one vote. It's not going to change anything.
In the long term, the more people that vote, the more people realize that it isn't just something that, happens every 4 years.
That was like a very important point. Like, it's definitely like the more who do it, like the more like people will be encouraged to do it and realize it's such an important thing. But I noticed like the trend of like, oh, well, I mean, I don't really like both of the candidates. And I mean, that's fine if you don't, but it's just more of we're going to be stuck with one of them for the next 4 years, right? So it's like, you may not like both of them, but which one would you rather be stuck with for the next 4 years, right? But like, just vote for the one that you think will be better.
I feel like how some people don't vote, but then they start complaining about like the laws that are being made, but then like you're not voting, so you're not really doing anything to prevent those laws from being made and actually making a change. So that's why it's like important.
There's like so much at stake here, and as this generation, I think we should be the ones caring the most. And it's sad to say that last election, youth voter turnout was like pretty bad. Like, I don't know why youth aren't getting out there. I don't know if it's because they don't know, but the real thing that we can do is educate others, educate the importance of voting. Obviously, you grew up with your parents, but it's like, you can think differently.
So much like pressuring is going on, I feel like, when you vote like with family members or with friends, and like social media a lot too. It's just like, yeah.
Okay, so I think now that we've talked about like the importance, I have a question about like where can we find more information about pre-registering and voting for like each individual state.
That can all be like just finding out all that stuff about voting can be, it's on here. Let me look it up. It's called like you can just look up like voter registration and everything will pop up on how to register to vote.
I also would recommend that you look up, say, I know some people are from New York, some people are from, all around the world, or all around the country. And so basically you want to look up, for example, Los Angeles Secretary of State or California Secretary of State.
Also, if you're 16 or 17, go pre-register to vote. It takes 2 minutes. I promise you, it's literally the shortest thing ever. And it's so important because I know like taking time to register to vote, even though it's so short, like it's easy to forget, which is kind of sad, but it's true. Everyone has busy schedules. So if you just take like 2 minutes out of your day to just go pre-register to vote, and you can find all that information if you go to the Civic Center, pre-register to vote, it'll take you to the Secretary of State's page. It's so easy, guys.
Will bring us to our next topic, which is educating yourselves on voting. And our first question is biased sources, and like, how do we avoid those? Because I know a lot of like social media platforms have like a lot of very biased sources, or like people are obviously going to be biased towards like who they're going to vote for or the candidate they think are fit better, right? So I think what's really important is, especially for people who are just starting out to like go and vote, like how do you avoid those like biased sources, just like so it doesn't stray your view or your opinion, so you can like truly formulate it?
I think that it's important to I know there's I forgot what it's called, but I'm pretty sure it's called like League of Women. But there's like so many sources that just tell you about the propositions and just tell you about what the candidate supports. And so I think it's important to kind of just get educate yourself and do your research when it comes to looking at like just the plain facts of like what it actually is. And then it's your job to kind of decide that if this is kind of, you know, your opinion. I will look up a couple so to make sure everyone has them, but I believe Vote 411, there's so many other things that kind of have a non-biased opinion.
Also, if you like want to find non-biased sources, in my AP seminar class, our teacher like sent out this like image, and it has like a chart of like a bunch of newsletters and like magazines. They're on like on a scale of like more biased to the right or to the left, or if they're moderate.
Okay, then let's move on. So our last topic for today is respecting others' political views. Why should we respect it? And I know it seems like a no-brainer on why you should, but like really, like why should you?
There's like so much division in politics today, and it's sort of just being fueled by like Democrats and Republicans and their like hatred for each other, which it ultimately stops conversations from starting. In order to like discuss and make change, you have to open a discussion, and to do that you need to talk to the other side. It shows like respect for them, and it can open up like a conversation in the future.
Just see where they're coming from. And also, not only does it make you seem like a good person, just like that you can like respect those other people's political views, but just like your entire party, showing that like your party knows how to respect the other party's political views.
I think people need to, you know, respect other people's views because, you know, they're allowed to have their own opinions. They formulated their own opinions, you know, hopefully they did their research. And so you cannot like just tell people, oh, you have to think one certain way because you don't necessarily know what kind of encouraged them to think that way.
I mean, as I feel like as something I'm really passionate about, it's like it's hard to hear like the other side sometimes, and it's very, very difficult because like you're very much like I have a very strong opinion, and I know that's like the same for a lot of different people, right? And I've definitely not been the most respectful person that I had hoped to be. Like I'll go into something and I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna be respectful, and then by the end of it I'm like super upset.
Yeah,
Okay. And I also feel like some people, once they stick to a certain like side, they don't want to listen to the other party or the other side. Like they only care about the good things, and they're really stubborn about hearing the other side, and they just don't want to talk about it.
Other thing is like, which actually is one of our questions, is like within the whole like respecting political views. I know that I have peers and other like people also like they're like of course they haven't also been the most respectful, but I also think that in my opinion there's some things that like really shouldn't be political but they've somehow been turned political. And I think when it comes to certain things, I think like there really isn't, it really shouldn't be political when it comes to like different things, like certain topics such as like the Black Lives Matter movement. I really don't think that it should be political since it's lives. It's not like climate change. It's not like something that a bill could be passed.
People think differently of you doesn't mean they don't deserve respect and, you know, kindness. And I think it's important to kind of realize that, you know, everyone's human. Everyone has different ideas. That is okay. It's okay to, you know, agree to disagree. It's okay to, you know, still be friends with somebody even if they think differently. I think, you know, obviously there are like certain exceptions to that, but, you know, you have to respect everyone. And, you know, being mean to people because they have different ideas, or, you know, pressuring people to think the same as you is not really, you know, serving the best point.
Hi, thank you so much for watching, and if you want some additional information on organizations, keep watching.
How did you guys like first think of the idea of creating this organization for voters' rights? And do you have any like tips for people who may just be starting their own organization? Like how do they spread the word and like grow inside?
I actually I'm not the founder of this organization, but, you know, I think what kind of drew me to this organization was, you know, my beliefs and my idea that like everyone should have the right to vote and everyone should, you know, have the be educated about it. And so I think tips for people who are kind of looking to join organizations or start organizations is to go down to like what you care about, and then, you know, do your research. And there's so many organizations out there, and so there is going to be a right one for you. It's not necessarily about political opinion, it's about the issue at stake.
I think so. Just to wrap up this wonderful discussion and panel, I think that for final thoughts, I think like the main points is obviously, again, get out there and vote. And also like get involved, even if you're younger, like get involved and be able to be like, yeah, I know my stuff, and like I'm prepared for the next election, or I'm prepared to like have discussions, I'm prepared to interact with my peers and like my family friends, or like adults, or like different, or like my teachers, parents, like just different people from everywhere, just to be able to discuss it and be able to share ideas. If anyone else has any final thoughts, feel free to unmute and relay them out loud. All right, so if no one has any other final thoughts, I think it is officially a wrap. I'd like to thank you guys all again for coming. I had a great time. I'm sure we all had a very, very great time. I love discussing this because I think it was definitely like a very, very, very important topic. And I'm again very grateful for you guys for coming out and taking time out of your day to discuss such an important topic with us. So thank you. Okay. Anyways, bye everyone.